The DBD tutorial was reworked a couple years back in hopes of improving the experience for new players. You've probably already played the DBD tutorial, but if you haven't already, just know it's really not that great. I still recommend playing it so you can get the blood points you earn from it. This game looks really simple, but it's not that beginner friendly, so I thought it might be a good idea to make my own version of the in-game tutorial for survivors. DBD is a 4v1 asymmetrical horror game where 4 survivors have to work together to escape one killer. In order to escape, survivors have to complete 5 generators in order to power the exit gates that lead to their escape. Working together as a team is crucial to survival, and we will cover all of the basics in this tutorial. First, select your survivor. Survivors are all the same in terms of hitboxes and speed. They all run at the same speed and they all have the same hitbox, regardless of size. The only difference at the moment is how loud their grunts of pain are. Each survivor starts with 3 unique perks, but you can unlock those perks on other characters, so you're not tied to playing that survivor. Now let's start playing. The most important part about playing Survivor is your camera control. Survivors have an advantage because they play in a third-person perspective. Killers play in a first-person, which limits their view. The third-person perspective as Survivor allows you to look behind you as you run the killer and allows you to gather more information about your surroundings. Learning how to look behind you is the first thing you should work on as Survivor. Your mouse controls your camera. You'll notice if you stand in place, you can use your mouse to look around. Now use WASD to move around. W moves you forward, A moves you to the left, D moves you right, and S moves you back. Think of them like the arrow keys on your keyboard. While holding shift to run, try to move your mouse to look behind you while running forwards. You'll notice that your character fully turns around. This is because you'll have to adjust your keys to look behind you while also moving your mouse. Whatever your mouse is doing, you have to do the opposite on your keys. For example, if you move your mouse back to look behind you, you need to shift from W to S. If you're only looking slightly right to look behind you because you're running left, then you'll use your A key, and so on. This part takes some practice, so you can use the tutorial to practice in a low-stress environment. While you run, you'll leave scratch marks in your environment. The killer uses these scratch marks to track you. You do not leave scratch marks while crouching or walking. You can use the control button to crouch, and you can move in place just like you can while walking. Scratch marks are not super precise, so sometimes they can be hard to track. Now let's talk about vaulting. Vaulting can help you evade the killer. You can vault over pallets and windows. There are 3 types of vaults at Windows: a fast vault, a medium vault, and a slow vault. Click space at a window without holding shift to slow vault. Now for a fast vault, you have to approach the window head on while holding shift. Hit space with enough distance for your survivor to fast vault. Fast vaults are the fastest, so it's important to learn how to achieve a fast vault. You need enough distance from the window to start your vault head on to achieve that fast vault. Any other attempt with not enough distance or from an angle will result in a medium vault. Medium vaults take almost twice as long as a fast vault. Medium and fast vaults alert the killer when he is within 48 meters with a loud noise notification that looks like this. Vaults are great for creating distance in chase. However, be very careful about how you use your vaults. You can only vault a window 3 times during a chase before the entity blocks it for 30 seconds. Killers are not affected by this entity block. Now that you've learned the basics about movement, let's talk about generators. Generators are your main objective during your match. There are 2 more gens than there are generators to be completed. This means the match starts with 7 gens around the map. Killers see the aura of gens in order to patrol and defend them. You can find gens from a distance by looking for the big lights peeking over tiles. Make sure to also check main buildings and important tiles such as shack for gens too. Some maps even have ways of guiding you towards gens. For example, on Larry's, you'll notice signs all around the map. If the sign light is on, that means there's a completed gen in that room. If the sign is flashing, that means there's a generator waiting to be completed. And if the sign is off, that means there's no generator. The game is another great example. Look for the big sliding doors to find a gen. There will be a gen on one side of these sliding doors. Complete gens strategically with your team. Ideally, you want to make sure that the last 3 gens aren't close together. Leaving the remaining gens close together makes it harder for survivors to complete them and much easier for the killer to patrol them. To complete a generator, hold M1 on the gen. Be prepared for skill checks. You will hear an auditory cue when a skill check's about to appear. Hitting great skill checks grants bonus progress on the gen. However, missing a skill check notifies the killer and regresses the generator. Working on gens together is a great idea sometimes. However, there's a penalty for working as a team. It takes 90 seconds to complete a gen by yourself. Working on a gen with one teammate incurs a 15% penalty. So at 2 survivors, it will take you about 53 seconds to complete a gen. At 3 survivors, it'll take you about 43 seconds. Since you only save 10 seconds on the gen by working in 3s, it's almost always better to never work more than 2 to a gen, unless you're trying to work on a very time-sensitive generator. Killers can regress your gen with perks or by kicking your gen. So if you ever have to leave your gen with progress behind, make sure to check on it soon in order to prevent it fully regressing to 0. Now let's talk about terror radius. As you're completing your objective, you'll know the killer is coming because you'll hear the terror radius or heartbeat. However, always be on high alert. Some killers have no terror radius and there's no warning they're on their way. Once the killer finds you, it's time to run away and waste as much time as you can. The more time he spends chasing you, the less time he spends patrolling generators, allowing your teammates to complete the objective. Looping is a huge part of this game. You will want to find tiles around the map that have pallets and windows to work with. Killers are usually faster than survivors. Survivors run at 100% movement speed, and most killers run at 110 or 115% movement speed. Because the killer's faster, you'll have to create distance by looping. Looping is the idea of hugging obstacles to create distance. The reason this works is because survivor hitboxes are smaller than killer hitboxes. So for example, this is a pallet loop. A survivor hitbox is this small, allowing them to tightly loop the pallet loop. The killer's hitbox is going to be bigger, so they'll be looping it a bit wider, which is what creates distance for yourself. The killer will eventually catch up, but you waste time by hugging your loop and creating distance this way instead of running in a straight line where no distance is created. The tighter you hug, the more distance you create. Once the killer gets close, you can drop the pallet by hitting space. If the killer gets hit by the pallet, they will become stunned momentarily, buying you more time. It's always a good idea to see what the killer does before moving on to the next tile. If they don't break the pallet, survivors can vault pallets to waste more time. Killers cannot vault pallets, so a down pallet can be a great way to buy time for your team if the killer refuses to break it. If they break the pallet, use the time they spend breaking to reach another tile. Once the killer catches up, he will hit you and injure you. When you become injured, you get a haste. Use this speed boost to leave the area and get distance from the killer and try to go towards another tile with pallets or windows. Usually, the bigger the tile, the safer the tile is. The speed boost is crucial for wasting time, so take advantage of that distance instead of staying where you are. Once you go down, the killer will pick you up. Once you're in the killer's arms, you need to start wiggling. Skill checks will pop up in the center of your screen. Hit your skill checks to continue wiggling. Despite popular belief, great skill checks do not grant a bonus in progression on wiggling, so they don't help you wiggle faster. They only make a slight difference in how much the killer feels your wiggle. However, the effect is so minimal, it's not really impactful to your survival. The main purpose of the skill checks is to serve as an on-off switch. Hitting your skill checks keep that switch on, and missing it turns it off until you start hitting them again. It takes 16 seconds to wiggle out every time, regardless of great or good skill checks, as long as you hit all of your skill checks. Survivors get 3 hook states. On the first state, you can attempt to unhook yourself. This is a last resort as there's only a 4% chance of you unhooking yourself. You should really only attempt if there's no chance your teammate can come save you. As long as you get saved before the halfway point, you will not go into second phase or struggle phase. The next time you get hooked, or if you don't get saved in time, you will be on your second stage. At this stage, you will receive skill checks that you have to hit in order to stay alive. Your third and final stage is your death hook. If you're not saved before your timer is out, or if you're hooked a third time, the entity will take you and the game is over for you. Now let's talk about what you should do if your teammate's on hook. On the left side of your screen is your survivor HUD. You can look at this area to see what everyone is doing. A generator indicator shows someone who is on a gen. The big tentacles around a survivor indicate that they are the obsession. The obsession is there in case of any obsession-based perks. The little tentacles that move are indicative of a survivor in chase. A plus symbol indicates someone healing, and the little skull icon shows the survivor doing some sort of killer power objective, such as taking off their head trap against the saw killer, the pig. In game, you'll notice a little exit gate symbol when someone's opening the gate as well. Now, how is this important for unhooks? You should always pay attention to what your teammates are doing on the HUD to decide whether or not you should go for the save. Unhooks can be risky, so ideally someone with minimal hook stages and healthy should go for the save. However, use the HUD to see if anyone's going for the save. If everyone is occupied on the HUD, like on gens, and someone is in chase, you should always go for the save before the person hits struggle. It's almost always better to trade hooks than to let your teammate go struggle. Now let's talk about the anti-camping mechanic. Let's say you're going for the save and the killer's camping the hook very close by. There's a mechanic in place to help survivors that are being camped. This is the anti-camping mechanic. When you're hooked, you'll notice a little bar pop up and slowly begin to fill when you're being camped. This bar will continue to fill as long as the killer's camping. However, if another survivor comes close to the hook, the progress on the anti-camping meter will pause. This includes a survivor downed near the hook as well. All survivors must be at a distance and the killer has to be within range of the hook for the anti-camping meter to fill. For this reason, sometimes it's better to leave the area where a survivor is being camped to allow their anti-camping meter to fill up. Do a gen from a distance and watch the hook that's being camped instead. As long as the survivor's on hook, they're safe from being tunneled, which is where the killer will target them after unhook to try and get them out of the game as soon as possible. Pay attention to their hook progress from a distance to avoid pausing their anti-camping meter. If they get camped long enough, they'll be able to unhook themselves. If they're unable to hook themselves by the time they're about to go struggle, then you should go for the save. Once you or a teammate are unhooked, you will come off hook in the injured state. While you're injured, you're louder and you leave trails of blood, making it easier for the killer to track you. Other survivors can heal you and you can heal your teammates to help them survive. Teamwork is really important as a survivor. If you're unable to heal each other in time, it's a good idea to take a hit for an injured survivor when possible. This will make the killer waste more time trying to down someone. It's also a great idea to pay attention to the HUD to see how many hook stages your teammates have. If you notice you haven't been hooked but all of your teammates have, you should attempt to take chase and waste the killer's time in order to allow your teammates to heal and give them a better chance at survival. The moment you lose a teammate in the trial, the match is a lot harder, so keeping everyone alive for as long as possible is important to your survival. Once all the gens are complete, the exit gates will be powered. You can open the exit gates at this point. Opening the exit gates to full will open the doors, but at a cost. In-game collapse will start when the exit gates are open. This is an in-game timer. Anyone that hasn't escaped by the time the in-game collapse runs out will automatically be sacrificed to the entity. For this reason, it's important to decide when the right time to open the gates is. Pay attention to the HUD and see if everyone is safe. If you realize someone is in chase, leave the exit at 99, but stay at the gate and be aware of your surroundings to quickly open it if the chase heads your way. If someone gets hooked and they're far away from the doors, it's a good idea to leave the door 99 in case someone else goes down on their way to the door. If someone is hooked near a door, you can open it before going for the unhook. Work as a team and take hits for each other in order to make it out. Use your game sense to decide when the right time to open the door is. Once everyone is safe, you can escape. In situations where all of your teammates die, endgame will look a little different. When you're the last survivor standing, you can leave through a trapdoor called hatch instead of exit gates. Hatch only spawns when there's one survivor left in the trial, so this can come in handy if your teammates abandon you as well. Hatch spawns in a random location, but typically will spawn near important structures on the map. Listen for the sound hatch makes so you can hear when you get close. Exit through hatch before the killer comes, because he can close the hatch, making it hard for you to escape. If the killer finds hatch before you and closes hatch, you'll have the chance to open an exit gate and escape. If you're lucky and the killer doesn't find you at your door, you might be able to make it out. That concludes my version of the DBD tutorial. This is far more in-depth than the original tutorial, but I try to cover all of the basics that I think a player should know in order to succeed. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me know what type of tutorials you guys want to see next. And for all my new players, welcome to Dead by Daylight.